24th COMESA Summit of Heads of State and Government is happening, and today is the second day of the event that is happening at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. And Kenya is poised to take over leadership from Burundi, and we want to just take a look at the possibilities with Kenya at the helm. How will it shape Africa's regional future? Because we are looking at issues to do with tariffs and land tariffs, the quota systems, matters to do with intra-COMESA trade. How is Kenya going to play it out, and what kind of a legacy does the country want to leave at the helm, when it's at the helm of COMESA? Kevin Osido is the Executive Director of the County Governance Watch, and also in a very short time I will be joined also by David Alulu, who is an economic expert. So we are going to look at all the issues that have been raised and the possibilities that Kenya presents to the whole idea of COMESA, because African trade is very important. And having these bodies, we're talking about Africa, Continental Free Trade Area, COMESA, ECOWAS, SADC, all those bodies. How can Africa capitalize on them to present itself as a competent trading partner with other entities of the globe? That is a conversation that is coming to you right about now. Welcome to the program, Bwana Kevin Osido.
Asante sana, Mike.
How have you been?
I have been well, and I thank God for life.
Yes.
And for the opportunity to contribute to conversations that spur policy engagement and also raise citizen voices.
Yes.
Particularly to the leadership of the country, the region, and even globally. Thank you.
Bwana David Alulu.
Yes, sir.
It's been a minute.
Yes, it's been a moment.
Umekuwa salama?
Nimekuwa salama, nashukuru.
All right, I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
But also, from your perspective, Osido, if I may start with you.
Yeah.
What do you think, the fact that Kenya is taking over the chairmanship of COMESA, from your perspective, what can we expect?
Thank you so much. One of the things that I believe that is of profound importance, particularly for this particular discussion, is one, the space of COMESA. So you look at demographics,
yes,
and we are talking about over 600 million people whose interest is trade, whose interest is probably pushing it further is manufacturing, whose interest is to ensure that there is a proper environment for doing business, and that there is also a very enhanced value chain for their engagement in particularly what each of the 21 member states of COMESA therefore present. And if you were to look at that kind of demographic, and particularly the kind of GDPs of the different countries, we are talking about more than 600 billion US dollars. Now, the beauty of that for me, and especially given the chairmanship of Kenya in this 24th COMESA Summit, is the theme. And so the theme focuses on leveraging on digitization, yes, to be able to enhance and spur, to deepen value chain and of course, pass a sustainable growth for each of the countries. And Kenya, in my view, Mike, is prized and primed to be one of the biggest digitized countries, if you were to look at the region.
Yes.
And especially among the 21 member states of COMESA. And so that to me is one of the biggest carrots that Kenya is dangling,
yes,
and therefore the opportunities that also present with digitization. And I'm happy that yesterday when the PS for Trade opened the gave a speech at the summit, he indicated that Kenya therefore becomes one of the inaugural countries to sign the eco certification licensing, and that is part of the protocols that form the COMESA Summit engagement. And therefore that already is an example of what Kenya has to offer.
Yes.
But if you move it further, is also to look at the kind of successes that Kenya therefore has to present to the member states. Talk about M-Pesa and what we have been able to do with digitization. Talk about the biggest conversation now in the country, which is the EGP, the electronic government procurement processes. And so Kenya therefore is coming forward to the chairmanship with something to show and really value that can be added. But even the second thing that I think is a plus to us as a country is again the biggest talk of town right now, which is called the Nyota.
Yes.
And you see all the principal secretaries across the country, launching and sharing what really this presents. And so those are also spaces that therefore Kenya has to be able to show insofar as revamping and enhancing and even strengthening what we call micro, small and medium enterprises. And so therefore again, what those kind of spaces present for small people, quote unquote, small people within the value chain.
Yes.
Like women, youth, persons with disabilities. And so I am of the opinion that the space therefore is revamped for Kenya to be able to present something much more fundamental and largely is also to engage in the policies, because I believe that part of the challenges that we have across these different multilateral and bilateral conversations is normally the doing part of it. So we do too much of the talk, but largely the doing. So we end up having crafted nice policies, we have nice protocols, we have very good agreements that we agree on as member states and as countries. But ultimately the doing part of it becomes a problem. And I think that President William Ruto has also risen up as a gentleman who wants to rubble some waters in the ocean of Africa.
Yes.
And if we listen to him very nicely and keenly during the United Nations General Assembly, is a gentleman who is priming or bringing up Kenya as that country that now can be able to stand tall within Africa. And so we are hoping that picking up from UNGA and also all these conversations that are happening, what value will that kind of rubbling really present to COMESA, particularly because Nairobi is hosting this summit?
Yes. Before I come to you, Alulu, let's cross over to KICC, where our reporter Regina Manyara is at, and she's going to brief us on what to expect today. Regina, if you can hear me, what is the latest from the KICC where the COMESA Summit is happening?
Well, good morning to you, Mike Migwi. This is day 2 of this particular summit, and it has been termed as a high-level dialogue, more looking at it as the policy day of this particular summit. What you can see behind me is a venue that is the KICC. So today we're expecting chief guest, none other than the Deputy President, that is Professor Kithure Kindiki, to grace this particular occasion. What should you be looking out for? Let's take a walk and see what is going to be happening in the main hall. This is a Savo Hall. We're going to be talking about public-private sector partnerships, talking about business policy and how digital transformation is going to enhance this. We're also going to be talking about smart agriculture and value chain competitiveness. Kenya prides itself as an agri-driven economy. But the question is, what we are trading on in as far as agriculture is concerned, does it give value to the farmer? So with the digital technology enhancement, is this going to change? Those are some of the questions that the partners are going to be dealing with. The main hall is just right behind me, and we're expecting delegates from across the country as well as across the COMESA countries, so to speak. Another issue that we're going to be talking about is the digital transformation and logistics. COMESA has been in place for several years, but the question is, are states trading within each other? There's been a call to harmonization of policies, and with having digital transformation and technology, will this work? Those are the questions that were posed yesterday during the B2B business enhancements, and we're expecting the same questions to be addressed, focusing on technology and digital transformation. This is the main hall. It's the Savo Hall, where we're going to be having those key discussions, Mike. Also, some of the issues you're going to be looking at is logistics and mobility. We have borders, but with digital and technology innovation, then it means the borders stop to exist. Is this the answer to have more COMESA states trading with each other? That's a question that is likely to be answered in the course of this particular summit. We are also going to be looking at key objectives. One of them is identifying actionable steps to accelerate digital trade adoption. strengthening regularization, harmonization of investment promotion, and support free movement of business people and logistics innovations. What are the key outcomes of this particular summit? We are calling it the Nairobi Business Declaration of 2025. The recommendations by the heads of state, that is going to be happening tomorrow, as well as a consensus on pilot corridors for digital facilitation. Looking at Kenya, we have been prioritizing the digital superhighway to enhance trade as well as movement of persons. And this might be just one of the things that Kenya is going to be pushing, given that we are going to be leading, or rather heading, this particular chairmanship. So we also have to look inwards when it comes to that. So those are some of the issues that we are likely to have prioritized on day 2, which has been termed as the 18th COMESA Business Forum, the high-level dialogue, public-private sector dialogue on digital trade, agri-tech, investment, and logistics. So in a nutshell, Mike, this is how the hall looks like. In several hours or several minutes, so to speak, we're going to be having our chief guest, that is the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, to grace this particular occasion, Mike. So we'll continue keeping tabs on that as we await tomorrow, which is going to be Wednesday, where we're going to be having the EU Horticulture Connect. This is also going to be the day that we look at matters of operationalization in regard to proof of concept engagements, contracts, and policy feedback loops. So that is just but a recap or an overview of what happened on day 1. This is day 2, and we'll continue keeping tabs on what is happening right here at KICC. Now back to you, Broadcasting House.
Regina, if you can hear me before I let you go, you know, Kenya is big on digital transformation. And given that we are taking over chairmanship of COMESA and looking at the market and how Kenya performs within COMESA, how do you think this digital transformation provides a competitive advantage for the country?
All right. Now, Mike, that is a very good question, because the theme towards seamless trade in digitally connected COMESA, that's a big question among us member states who are going to be attending this particular summit. And when you talk about trade digitalization, it remains COMESA's biggest opportunity and challenge. That is maybe the introduction of certificates of origin, the single window systems, as well as custom harmonization, indeed could reduce trade transaction costs by at least 30%. So when you're talking about how it is going to transform trade, if we go digital, well, you have a figure there, around 30% of those challenges, if this is actually taken out.
Later on, Regina, to keep us updated on what is happening there at KICC. But coming back here in studio, there's something that Osido said about digitization. And Alulu, from your perspective, given that digitization is at the core of COMESA's whatever they are doing, are we going to see a data-driven kind of a trade within this block?
Thank you very much, Mike, for having me. For starters, I think much as Kenya desires and actually pushes for digitization, I think we still have a challenge within the bloc where I personally feel COMESA member states, majority of them, haven't given the best goodwill to the growth of the bloc. One, for example, there is something that Regina just mentioned there about the free movement of traders and business people, which you still find as a problem within the COMESA region. We have members who, in one, on the other side of the coin, they speak of trading together, working together, and sharing the market. But then on the other hand, they are still making things difficult for others so that they penetrate through or maneuver through to the disadvantage of others. And so, yes, digitization is key and would work for a better growth of the bloc. But then the goodwill is what we lack now in the region. For example, we now have a problem with the issues of visas across the bloc.
Yes.
There are countries where unless you have a visa, you can't go, yet you are trading together. So we are speaking of a common market. We are speaking of free trade. But then, if I'm to access that market, I need to apply for a visa. I need to get a prior travel arrangements. So banking on what my brother says here, I think Kenya has presented herself as a big brother, and listening to our leader, the president, speak even on international platforms, he has shown goodwill. He has shown the desire to make Kenya a better place for business.
Yes.
For starters, we know in Africa, Kenya is one of the countries where African can access without a visa.
Yes.
All right. So majority of African countries can easily and comfortably walk in and walk out. So that becomes even ripe for business. But then the question would be, within the bloc, how many countries are offering the same, which now becomes a real challenge. So somebody from the COMESA member state can freely walk into Kenya,
Yes.
can come do business in Kenya, but now when it comes to reciprocate, how many countries offer us that? We have a few countries, for example, South Africa just the other day allowed us the 90 days free visa,
yes,
where a Kenyan can go in for 90 days. After that, you have to apply for a visa or a work permit. So you realize that much as we have a good talk out there, or like another person would say, we have a good document reading and showing how clearly we need to move, but practically, we have a problem. Everybody has some hidden agenda.
Yes.
Everybody wants to generate their own revenues. Everybody wants to benefit from the block. Everybody wants to get the biggest chunk. So I think there is still a need for the COMESA block to have a common ground where one, we agree that let there be a common market like it should be.
Yes.
Let there be a common market where every member state can access the market without limitations.
With Kenya at the helm, and pegging on what you've said, we know Kenya has waived visa restrictions for African countries. But at the helm of COMESA, do you see that incentivizing other countries within the bloc to maybe do the same, waive visa requirements?
It is a big challenge because you'd realize that every country has some sort of an underhand, if I might use that word, a hidden agenda or some sort of, because everybody wants to receive but not to give. You know, life becomes more beautiful when you are a good giver, because I am a Christian and we are taught that a cheerful giver receives more blessings.
Yes.
So when we have countries who want to receive more and give less, then it becomes a limited access even to opportunities. Why do I say this? For example, if for a short while when President Ruto came into office, there was a challenge of supply of food commodities, sugar and maize and all this. And we know some of these COMESA countries have really good production and supply of sugar, for example. But then you'd realize that we have other people who have a very unique interest that makes it difficult to trade within the bloc and prefer to trade outside the bloc. So to incentivize this and to make it work for the rest of the region, it might be a little bit challenging if there is no goodwill. So the challenge the bloc finds in all this is goodwill from the member states. So I think we need to come up with an accord. We need to agree as a COMESA bloc that this is what we want to achieve. And to a large extent, you'd realize perhaps we need African Union also to contribute in making Africa a better place for Africans. Because if, for example, Kenya is offering a free entry for Africans, but then the sister countries are making it difficult for some of member states, including Kenya, to access their markets. So that then becomes really challenging when you see me as a Kenyan in another COMESA state, you are like, this person is coming to take everything from me. Then it becomes a real challenge. So we need to have a goodwill, we need to have an understanding, and then we need to have a better mentality towards opening up of the market. So opening up of the market is key, but then how then do you open up the market for movement of goods, but then you limit the movement of people, because you cannot access goods without allowing people to promote those goods. And so I think there is need for Kenya being at the helm to perhaps inspire and or encourage the rest of the member states to now embrace the fact and the need of having everybody open up the market by making it easy, accessible and friendly for every member state.
Indeed. Let's take a very short break, and when we come back, the aspect of goodwill is very important. You've raised a very important aspect, because even the political environment of member countries will dictate how trade goes. Let's take a very short break. We'll be back with this conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about COMESA that is happening, and with Kenya poised to take over the chairmanship. Kenya at the helm of COMESA. How is it going to shape Africa's regional future? And before we went on a break, Alulu raised a very important point concerning goodwill. And you know, goodwill even stems from a political aspect of it all, and the political environment within COMESA member states. Osido, how do you think that influences trade within the bloc?
Of course, Mike, it does, and that's a very good point by David. Because, of course, the politics really drive a lot of engagements within blocs, within states and nations, and even within intra-countries. And so, therefore, political goodwill presents a very, very fundamental indicator of how most of these, even the agreements that are made, the policies that are crafted, and even the agreements that are signed, how they are going to be implemented. And that is why sometimes I shudder to wonder, for example, when you call it a summit, because my thinking is that a summit is really a platform, an engagement of heads of states and heads of governments. But then when you have 21 of them and some do not show up, some of them send officers who are not able to engage and have conversations that are really expected, because the agenda is sent way in advance. This is not something that was planned on Sunday and it is happening on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. It has been planned for many, many months. And so therefore the question that presents is, what is the space of the head of that particular state and the head of that particular government, which really presents the first instance of political goodwill, because you are the head of state, you are the head of government. Directors are not going to sign those agreements. And so therefore that really, in my view, presents, and from a governance and leadership perspective, prevents the first indicator of positive political goodwill. Number two is the level of implementation of these policies, agreements, and the protocols that are signed. And if you look at some of the protocols that guide these summits, COMESA, EAC, ETC, there are countries that are lagging behind. They are lagging behind in implementation of those very important protocols. And so you ask yourself, but why? Yet during that particular day, as we crafted our way forward, we agreed on a 3 months, a 6 months, a 9 month, 1 year, 2 years implementation framework. What has suddenly happened? And if you look at it, you wonder why, therefore, political goodwill is being dented. Because the expectation, Mike and David, is that this is for us, is for free trade amongst ourselves. It is going to be a common market. So all of us have some value that we are adding into the market. But how come it is not exciting, therefore, to the other state or to the other government? And I believe that there is therefore an agency, Mike, insofar as auditing implementation processes.
Yes.
So that if we are talking about the 24th COMESA Summit, what happened in the 23rd?
Yes.
What happened in the 22nd? How was the 9th? The first one when it started, how did it start and what were the agreements? Because
how was the implementation?
Yes, exactly. Therefore, we begin to underscore why some states and governments would be lagging behind. But of course, an excuse that might be given is what I would call government transitionary periods, because of course, President William Ruto was not there probably in the previous one. People like, President of Zambia, we just had them having their elections the other day. So probably transitions and change of governments. But remember that does not change the protocols.
Correct.
That does not change the agreements.
Yes.
It doesn't change the articles of agreements that have been signed by heads of governments and states at the summit level. So the question therefore that begs is, what is this thing that might not excite positive political goodwill?
Yes.
And I think for me, two things that therefore come up is one, trade competition.
Yes.
So there are countries that probably look at themselves as inferior within the bloc. And so you ask yourself, but why do you think you are inferior? Is it that you do not have commodities that you'd wish to be traded with other countries and other governments? Is it that your policies are extremely restrictive, that you don't open up your borders to others? And of course, David spoke about issues of visa. We are talking about issues of work permits, business permits. Is it that they are not as open to other member states, or is it that there is something that they are hiding? And this could probably be in trade fees and licenses, where, for example, your fees go beyond the agreed, blocks fees, where, for example, access to licenses are so exorbitant. And one good example, I believe, that we continue to see is Kenya and South Africa, where initially, and I kept asking myself, why is it that South Africans coming to Kenya are visa-free, but Kenyans going to South Africa, you must get a visa? And now it is true, yes, that we have a 90-day period, where then if you're a Kenyan, you can go in, do your research, do your analysis. And because Kenyans are quite aggressive people, very innovative, and our president said we are hustlers, so we can hustle across anywhere. So the 90-day period gives you an opportunity. Exactly. We are also survivors. It gives you an opportunity to want to go and test the waters. But then the question then that would beg is, as you test the waters, how is the trade and market environment? How is the ease of doing business? If you were to open up a company, if you want to go and open up, a printing branding company in South Africa, how would it look like? So there could be a mechanism or a sense in which, Mike, therefore, that these trade licenses and the policies that are made to domesticate, these kind of protocols like COMESA protocols and among others, become so stifling to quote unquote President Trump's words, immigrants or people who come from other countries to want to trade with these countries. And then the second bit of it, in my view, would be the logistics, and that goes beyond just visas, permits, etc. But even the ease of engagement within the bloc itself, within a country. So if you are, for example, engaged in transport, is it that your lorries get wasted for days without end across the borders awaiting clearance? How is that dealt with at the level of, or at high-level conversations like the summit that we're having in Nairobi right now? Because over time we have even seen, madereva wa lori wakigoma kule Busia, Namanga, among other places, within the COMESA bloc.
Yes.
How is that engagement undertaken to be able to make it easy, for movement of goods and people? Because if we are not keen to look at how we also excite traders, how we motivate businessmen and businesswomen, I think that those are some of the things that people will begin to say that these are just talks without actions. Because, for example, right now, roads are closed in Nairobi because we expect that delegates are supposed to move from one area to another. Heads of states are supposed to be, within the shortest time, headed to KICC. And so Kenyans are watching and seeing what value blocking us and keeping us waiting because kuna fuleni ya magari, what value will it add to us who are going to work, who are transporting our businesses, our goods, and our, tradeware, what value will that conversation really attract? And of course, our other neighbors, you know, who are members of COMESA are also asking themselves. So our officers have gone to Nairobi. What value will that add insofar as making business easy for us? And I think, therefore, that political goodwill, Mike, in my view, presents the very first opportunity for us to be able to crack some of the challenges and some of the difficulties that really emanate from business and, of course, trade within the bloc.
Indeed, and also the aspect of infrastructure and connectivity within COMESA region, and Kenya having ports, logistic corridors, digital systems to improve cross-border trade and competitiveness. How do you see Kenya leveraging on this to enhance trade?
To just add up on what he said, you know, even closer home to the East African community, for example, where you have some member states not remitting their dues on time. Sometimes goes for years, and you'd hear cases of the Secretariat having no funds and activities not moving and all this. So I think the political goodwill is very key for COMESA and any other protocols to work. I think we are too excited as a people to sign protocols, but not very keen to implementing them. That is the biggest challenge we have. Even back at home, I think the biggest challenge everybody finds is a scenario where we have very good policies, we have good promises, we have spoken about how well we want to achieve, but then somebody sits somewhere and decides, I'm not going to make this work, because if it works, then somebody else or tomorrow will not have this opportunity. In terms of infrastructure, I think it still connects with the goodwill, because we have like landlocked countries within the bloc, which depend on countries like Kenya, who have access to the port and all that. But then you'd realize that there is still this competing factor. Sometimes back we had some issues with I think Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya about the pipeline, Hoima through to Mombasa and through to Dar es Salaam. And there was this, the other one offers law or something, and this one looks like, you know, there is this serious interests and competitions that sometimes you find so unhealthy, because if we are going to grow the bloc, there are things we can easily and simply agree. For example, talking of that infrastructure, we would say if Kenya, Uganda wants to trade on that area of the pipeline, maybe Tanzania, Congo, or Tanzania, Rwanda might want to agree on something else. And you see, you make the region freely accessible, the market open for everyone to try and do their thing, without necessarily having to hype it up and cause a lot of tension amongst the residents and the citizens of the bloc. And so leveraging on the infrastructure is key. But then we still find ourselves in this a very critical scenario and a challenging part of it, where everybody wants to feel as if they are the best. I am better than you. I can do better than you. I have more resources than you. You know, competition is good, but then within the bloc we want to have a healthy competition. If I am going to Europe, for example, today, whether I'm going to Germany, Netherlands, France, wherever, I go for, it's called Schengen visa. I just one, and I'll move across the 27, 29 countries. While here in East Africa, for example, just the other day I had a friend who was visiting me from the Gambia, and needed to go to Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda. You can imagine the challenge where there is this agreement between Kenya and Rwanda that you can have one visa to go through Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. But then Tanzania on the other side says you must have our own visa, different from the East Africa. So you realize that we are making things so difficult. So there is this non-COMESA member state who still finds opportunities in East Africa, for example. But one of the member states makes it difficult for this person to do business in East Africa, looking out either opportunities for this country or the other country. So, you know, somebody finds it very costly to pay $100 for East African visa, and they still come pay another extra $100 to go into Tanzania, for example. So you realize that even in as much as we want to bank on the infrastructure and the procedures that are laid to help make accessible the market, both COMESA and even the East African community, we still require a very serious agreement. He said something that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
You know, whether systems and regimes change or not, the fact remains, once the government has approved and assented to a protocol, that is an official agreement that this stands. That even after President Ruto leaves office now, another president that comes in will not try to come and change what was agreed, not unless it is negotiated on this table of the bloc. And so we need to sober up and mature to an extent to understand that once a member state has assented and agreed to the protocol, then it is binding, it is legal. We must align ourselves to what we have agreed. And finally, I think we need to have some sort of respect amongst ourselves, where every member state should view themselves as an equal partner to the other. Nobody should feel like, you know, I am being undermined because my GDP is lower than the other. We should all agree that since we are member states, we are the members to this bloc, then all of us are equal. We can, there is something that Mike offers that David might not be able to offer. And once we look at life from that angle, we would realize that it makes a lot of sense to work together as a team. Because if I want to block you, I block everybody, yet I can't bear the weight that both of you could have handled, then I'm killing myself ahead of time. And so I think the bloc requires to have a sober mind. The bloc requires to agree amongst itself and see to it that whatever it is that we are doing, we are complementing each other more than competing against each other. When we agree on complementing, then it means what, for example, Zambia offers, maybe Kenya cannot offer. What Uganda offers, maybe Tanzania might not be able to offer. And we agree that we want, in Africa, we have been having a lot of infrastructure funding from African Development Bank, which cuts across the continent. And so there is no excuse whatsoever to why you should say Kenya is more developed than Zambia or Tanzania, because we all have access to this infrastructure funding and we can make it work. So we should agree. We should set protocols that favor everybody, and then once we have agreed, let us learn to abide by what we have agreed upon. Not agreeing and then you go sit back and say, to hell with this, we shall discuss it again at the next summit. And the next summit, we come back from where we left. The same issue. Summing it up from where he commented and said, we need to have an assessment report, for example. In a summit like this, come and tell us, during the previous summit, we agreed on A, B, C, D. This is what we've been able to achieve. This we did not achieve because of this, and moving forward, we need to improve in this area. But you see, if we are in a scenario where, for example, a country like Kenya, using our own example, where every year we are given a finance bill, but then nobody comes to tell us the previous finance bill, the rate of success was this, the rate of failure was this is where we want to improve, this is where we want to cooperate. So we need to improve our systems in a manner that we agree to look at our successes, our hits and misses, what have we been able to achieve, and what are the areas, which one are the areas that require a lot of improvement, what do we need to benchmark, and what do we already have to offer so that others also come to benchmark. During the UNGA, just concluded one, many leaders were excited about the housing project in Kenya. All right, many. Actually, I was very keen on that one. I realized many leaders, not only in Africa, globally, were so excited and wanted to benchmark on affordable housing of President Ruto. And with that, Ruto already puts himself on the global map as a president who has offered a low housing units in Africa. And so we need some success projects in COMESA, for example, where somebody else can say, hey, COMESA has achieved this. But then we should not have a scenario where it seems like it is a conflict between COMESA, EAC, SADC, and all this. We should have a common ground that helps African countries to complement each other, to benchmark from one another, and to build up on the resources that are available in Africa.
Yes, Osido, this issue of a free movement of goods has bedeviled not only COMESA but also the East African countries. What do you think member countries shadowbox around this issue?
Part of the reasons, Mike, in my view, is the lack of identifying a value. So what I would probably call a country value. So that the question then is, what is Kenya, what is this one product that Kenya is presenting to the bloc?
Yes.
What is this product that Uganda is presenting to the bloc? What is this product that Rwanda has that Zambia doesn't have?
Yes.
That probably another country within the bloc does not have. And part of that, again, is really probably attached to the lack of political goodwill. Because when all our political leaders campaign, there is one thing or two things or three things they normally say. This is what I'm going to do. But when it comes to trade and business, we don't see countries coming up and saying, Uganda is good at this. Comoros, for example, is good at this. Madagascar is presenting this as part of this particular bloc. So that then, what summits and spaces of conversation and dialogue like this one need to do is to ask the question, how do we boost what you are good at and also trade with you based on what we have?
Yes.
But what do we see happening, which I think is largely the reason why we also see these trade delays, is because you have traders, for example, going to Uganda, Kampala, to get goods, bring them to Nairobi, and then transport them back to sell them to Ugandans, as an example. You have somebody coming from Rwanda, benchmarks or looks at what's happening in Nairobi or in Kenya, for example, the fishing, within the blue economy, and then you want to lift that back to your country without a proper mechanism of value that you're adding. Because the expectation is that if you get fish from Missouri market or Missouri Lake, where I come from, and you take it to Uganda, don't sell it back to me as fish. What value have you added? Yeah? What is this that you've made? Have you canned it? Have you tinned it? Have you made it sweet? What is this thing? And so if for example, you have officers, customs officers doing the searches and they are trying to engage and they ask you, but we have fish in this country. Where are you going to sell this one from?
Yes.
It becomes so difficult, and I think that sometimes the number of days that you take to explain why you want to sell a good or a product that another country has becomes very difficult.
All right.
So ultimately there is wastage. We also see a lot of just discouragement. So somebody will say, the market is not good for my good. Yet, the process leading to why it is not good for your good is where the issue is. So my proposal to summits like this would be, even as we talk about audit of implementation, we talk about audit of value chains, let's also ask ourselves, what is this one country product that we can be able to sell? And that, as David said, President William Ruto says Kenya is doing affordable housing, of course, despite the challenges and the controversies that come with it. But what is, so Kenya can be able to sell the process of doing this, and we can say this is something we have done, we have tried, we've tested, and we can actually guide and even share the template. What are other 20 member states of COMESA presenting, so that we don't say one good is being sold in 11 states, or member states, or 11 countries. What is the value, And then beyond that, brings in now issues like the theme of this particular summit, which is digitization. So the sectors within that one country product begin to ask themselves, how can we be able to provide licenses And those licenses become digital licenses. Certificates become, digital certificates, and even production origins are very, very clear. So that when we say is a certificate of origin, we don't have one pen being produced in 11 countries with different certificates of origin.
Okay.
It is a good that will not sell.
Yes.
It is a good that will, of course, flood the market
Yes.
with really no value.
Yes.
And I think that is part of where most of our summits really fail. We do too much talk in terms of policy regulations, but we don't do the V2 qua ground. So what is it that we are selling to the block, and what value does that product we have add to the block?
Yes, in the interest of time, 30 seconds each, closing remarks.
I don't know if it was real or fake, but I saw something trending online the other day that some neighboring country said they wanted to put up a curtain to close a mountain.
I saw it.
You see? So that tourists from this other country will not be able to see the mountain on the other side. Or something. Some of the statements that come from, even if it's just a joke, it's a bad joke.
Yeah.
It demoralizes the success of these protocols that have been signed. So I think member states need to get serious, need to get committed,
yes,
and realistic. Let's agree on things we can achieve rather than agreeing on things out of excitement, because excitement can mess you up by thinking, because everybody is doing, we can do it, then qua ground, vitu ni different. So I think we just need to agree and be realistic, be smart, and be achievers, so that we have something to show in future as other people come to benchmark.
All right, Osido, 30 seconds.
Yeah, mine is basically to thank Kenya for hosting and congratulate as well. But the expectation as a Kenyan is that we are going to add value, particularly in enhancing digital trade facilitation. Biggest conversations have been on non-tariff barriers. And I'm hoping that as the summit concludes, they'll be able to provide very clear measures that are going to be put in place. And finally is to empower the SMEs, and especially women and persons with disabilities, who, of course, spread across all the member states. Okay. And so the question then that would beg is, do they also have a space in summits like this where they can be able to share their challenges, their successes, and even make proposals for the betterment of the conversations?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Kevin Osido, who is the Executive Director of the County Governance Watch, and David Alulu, who is an economic expert, joining us here on Good Morning Kenya to talk about matters to do with COMESA. I want us to cross over to KICC